Right now, everybody is talking about cryptocurrency, and the criminals are hiding in the conversation. Cyber criminals use social engineering, loaded with urgency and fear, to successfully prey on your company, your employees, and your customers. Spear phishing is just one of 13 types of email threats. Barracuda has identified these 13 types and shows you how to protect your company, your customers, and your reputation. Find out about the 13 email threat types and Barracuda email protection. Get your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. How have business drivers impacted your organizational risk? Simulate Extended Security Posture Management enables CISOs to know what parts of your cybersecurity portfolio to keep, what to get rid of, and what to buy. Know that your cybersecurity investments are optimized and can reduce cybersecurity risk. With Simulate, you don't assume you are secure, you know. Visit securityweekly.com/simulate to learn more. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. Don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feeds and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. Don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings by visiting securityweekly.com/on-demand. All right, articles for the week. I missed both of you last week. So evolution means connecting business value to security. Oh, sorry. I guess I had a network blip at headquarters. I said I missed Jason and Ben last week. I put articles in here for both of you this week.
I love it. Thank you so much. We miss being here.
Glad to be
back. So this first, yes, it's good to have you back. So a CISO evolution. Now we've talked about the CISO evolution for a while now, and I was interested in, are we making progress? Because we see a lot of these articles, Jason and Ben, right? We see the CISO roles evolving. We're trying to be a seat at the table. We need to talk business value to security, and we talk about it, but is it actually happening? I guess that's the big question for me. Are you guys seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, if the listeners get a chance to read the article, I love the backstory behind this. I mean, the people who wrote the book, one of them was presenting at RSA, and nobody showed up to his talk except for one person. And what came out of it is they decided to write a book together about cybersecurity leadership because they started talking to each other. And I think that's just an outstanding story. As far as are we making progress, I think we are, but I think, we're still realizing some of those struggles that we've continuously seen. Getting the seat at the table, influencing the C-level executives, really getting meaningful conversations with the board of directors or the CEO, and really breaking down that barrier. And one of the things that was in this article that I loved was a focus on the art of negotiation, because I think sometimes we fall into the trap of sometimes saying no or being perceived as that department of no, when really it's about getting to the outcome that we can all agree upon, right? So, I think trying to make this a little short is I think there's work to do on both sides. I think we as leaders need to do better at giving folks outcomes that align with our security program. And I think, C-level executives, board of directors need to start seeing us as value add to the business.
Yeah, we talked.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit about push. I was to say it's a little bit about push-pull, right? I think that sometimes it's about facilitating in ourselves, like the right relationship, the right language, like, trying to figure out how to get involved in the business. And as you so correctly said, not being the department of no, trying to figure out how to get to yes, trying out how to win. You called out the call out to Chris Voss in here. I think, he was a head negotiator for the FBI, right? Everybody should read his book or, listen to it on a download. I think it's a great insight into what really negotiation should be. But at the same time, I think, Jason, I'm going to guess that you're going to be behind this 100%. Like, it's rough to get beat down all the time. I mean, once you feel like you're hitting your head against the wall every day and you're not getting anywhere to get that seat at the table or to, get involved in the rest of the business level discussion, it kind of takes a little bit of the wind out of, I think, a lot of our colleagues' sails sometimes, and makes it harder to want to try to keep reaching for that perfect state of, where CISOs should evolve to. And so I think we, again, we need to meet the business at the business, but the business needs to invite us in. And I just go back to hoping that some of this, the legislation and the requirements around board participation from a security side, I really hope that starts moving the bubble on this, because if it doesn't, it's just a long road.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, Ben. And that's, that's probably the main reason why we see CISOs jumping ship so fast, right? I mean, are we still looking at the average tenure of a CISO being right around that 18-month mark? I mean, I see a lot of my colleagues, jumping ship within a year. A year passes, and all of a sudden I'm seeing a new LinkedIn update, and they're at a new spot. So,
yeah.
I'm assuming it's not the right fit, and they're not gaining the traction that maybe they were promised during their interview, or getting the support that they were promised during the interview. So yeah, I mean, the business needs to support us as well. And at the end of the day, like I said, we have a responsibility as well. We have to build trust. Building trust within the organization, that creates influence. So it has to be both of those things working together.
Yeah, last week we were talking about building a culture of yes, because again, it goes back to this perception is security is the department of no. How do you create a culture of yes, and how do you make progress, right? And it leads into these first couple articles, because it is about negotiation. It is about talking to the business about, okay, we can do it this way, or we can do it this way, or here's the risk. Like it's an active discussion, and it's not just no, and it's not necessarily just yes, but it's having the conversations to move things forward. And that's why I pulled in the second article, because it talks a little bit about the resilience of your program and the flexibility of your program, because maybe it's not this particular piece, but it's a variation of that capability that allows you, because it works better for the business, right? And so having flexibility and resilience in your program may put you in a better position to have those negotiation discussions with the business.
Yeah, and this next article is perfect, because they quote something, right? And it says here, CISOs often ask, but I've heard CEOs, CFOs, leaders within organizations ask the same type of question all the time. How do I avoid being hit by the next major attack? Well, guess what? It's not predictable, right? And that I think that's a good moral of the story, is that we need to be able to start speaking toward business risk management, business resilience, because at the end of the day, if I go to the mall, I can't predict that someone's going to break into my car, but I can have all of the, the compensating controls in place. I can park in a good spot. I can make sure my alarm is set, all of those type of things. But we can't predict that. We have to have, the strategies to make it so the risk goes down. That's what we need to be communicating to leaders, is that we can't predict the next cyber attack. But what we can do is we can make our organization much more resilient and mitigate the risk.
Right.
And I think too many people still, like you said it's both sides of the coin again, right? It's CISOs trying to articulate a position of we're going to protect the org and we're not going to get compromised. And it's the rest of the C staff like coming in and saying, what are we doing? How do we get it? How do we spend enough money to make sure we don't get compromised?
Right.
It's just not it. It's just not the question. It's not the level of conversation that you should be having. The conversation should be, given the threat landscape and our, risk tolerance, we're essentially buying down the risk to a point where we think it's worth it if we get compromised, right? But it's really about what's the resiliency, what's the potential to get back on our feet quickly, how do we minimize the exposure and the impact to the company after this happens. That's really the worth of the CISO. Is how calm are they? How do they respond under pressure? And how do they manage the crisis moving forward, right? And how do you get to recovery quickly?
Yeah, what's interesting, somebody's going to ask me eventually, like, okay, why'd you pick living security? But this is one of the reasons I did, right? We know where some of the risk elements are. We know that our users are risky. in certain activities. We know that that is the opening to the potential breach or ransomware attack, right? We don't spend enough time on aspects of this. It's the risk management disciplines that are going to be important moving forward, Jason. Where are my risky users? Because if I have more risk in that group of users, then what can I do from a compensating or mitigating control perspective to protect those users if they do something risky that doesn't put the business in place? And even if they do, what are all my reactive controls to be able to be resilient and get back online quickly if it does happen, right? You have to play on both sides. You got to be on the proactive side and the reactive side. But without risk in the equation, how do you make the right decisions? Because you can't protect 100% of your employees all the time.
That's right.
You can't. It's impossible.
And this is exactly the conversation and why I love being on the consultative side, right? I mean, this is the conversation I literally had with a, $300+ million construction organization sitting across from a CFO asking about cybersecurity. And one of the first things we needed to talk to him about was, this is not a technology problem. This is risk mitigation. We're managing business risk. Let's have the strategic conversation. And, lucky for us that CFO had the insight to say, you want to know what? You're absolutely right. I want to do business with your organization. I want to hire Envision to come in here and help us with that level of strategy, right? It's, I'm so glad we're starting to see executives like CFOs want to have these conversations, realizing It's not just a technology issue.
Right. It's a people issue. It's more people than it is technology these days, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. Is if people are the biggest risk factor, then why aren't we spending more time helping the people?
Yeah, it's people, it's process, and then the technology, right? I mean, it sounds like we really wear those terms thin, but that's really what it is, right? We need to make sure we're educating people, we're giving them the right processes and standards and procedures. And then adoption of the technology. I've said this my entire career. You can bring in a shiny new tool, but if you don't adopt it and you don't have processes and you're not using it, it's just an expensive shelfware. That's all it is.
Yeah. We're going to get to that in a couple articles. I wanted to go to the 8 leadership and management principles from Jocko, right? I mean, you love this book. You've read this book. You followed Jocko extremely well. Every time this article pops up about once every year or so, and I pull it in because I know you love to talk about this one.
I do. Absolutely. No, this is, I love it when we can bring in military style leadership because honestly, it breeds true leadership skills and strategies that we can really bring over to the corporate world, right? Number one, it's accountability and responsibility. That's such a huge piece in today's workforce. We need to be taking responsibility for what falls into our teams, whether it's, they go on and say manage upstream and manage downstream, up the chain of command, down the chain of command. We need to feel responsibility in our organization to take the bull by the horns and start making progress. Leadership isn't a title, right? It's action. Being a leader is, you hold a level of accountability and responsibility within your organization. You want to go in and get things done. So, I love these articles. It's belief in your team. As a leader, you need to be able to articulate what the vision is, why is such a huge piece. Employees want to know why they're doing things, right? It's not just the what. Why are we here? Why are we doing what we do? Why is our business, here? And why do we exist? Why am I working so hard every day, sometimes 15, 16 hours? What's that outcome that we're trying to achieve as a business?
Yeah. The big one for me is being decisive with uncertainty and executing, right? Because remember, in the military, there are times you're disconnected from command. You're going to have to make decisions and execute against those decisions. Make those decisive decisions. The one thing that, in our industry right now, you see lots of startups, indecisiveness is like the killer of innovation and startups. It is the absolute killer because as soon as you wait to make that decision to execute against it, one of your competitors is going to go right by you.
100%.
And as leaders, you have to be able to make a decision, execute. If it's the wrong decision, fail fast and move on. But sitting there for 6 months to make a decision about, should I do this? Should I do that? You're just killing yourself from an innovation standpoint. And your competitors are going to catch you or pass you.
And you want to know what, Matt? The foundation of that and decentralized command and being able to make decisions on the fly all lends to number 8. Discipline equals freedom. That means you have the standards, processes, procedure, the discipline to get things done. When you can empower your staff to make those decisions on the fly because they know standard operating procedures, they know the processes and the appetite of the organization, they know what processes they should be following when, and it's like the back of their hand, they're empowered to make decisions on the fly.
Right. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Next article, practice transparent leadership. I'm a huge proponent of this for anybody who doesn't know me. Like, transparency is what I'm all about, to the point where some days it might actually burn you, but I'm always going to be transparent, only because I think it's, to me as a leader, being open and honest and having transparent conversations builds the trust you need to build your team and get them to the point where the previous article kicks in, right? Where they can make decisions. Right. They can create that freedom because they're confident in the decisions they're making, and then the organization can move faster. It starts with being transparent, being open and honest, and having these conversations. It's so foundational to the cultures that I look for when I go into organizations or when I'm looking for a new job. These are key elements for me because that's how you build that initial trust.
Yeah, I mean, it's having the healthy relationships with your team, right? And in order to have the healthy relationships with your team, they need to trust you. And, trust is, like I said, trust is that foundation of a relationship and influence and the ability to influence. And if you're not being honest and you're not being open, you don't allow for people to ask questions and you're commanding from upon high. You don't provide people with access to the right information at the right time. You're not involving your team in the decision making. You're not going to gain that trust. Therefore, you're not going to have that influence. You're not going to have those relationships. And then it's going to create a toxic environment.
Yep. Which impacts number 5, how to move from strategy to execution. 3 out of 5 organizations fail on the execution side. And part of it is because of poor leadership, which is why these articles are kind of stacked in the order that they're stacked this week. It's that leadership and the ability to have the right resources and the right processes to actually move from strategy to execution and deliver on those goals. And that's why these leadership discussions are so important when you think about how do you move an organization from one stage to the next? Because at the end of the day, it's about executing against your plans.
100%. And honestly, it's hiring the right mix of folks as well. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book. It's called Jet Fuel. But it's about the CEO and the chief operation officer, yin and yang, right? And you have the visionary, and then you have they call it the integrator. And they thrive together when that relationship is strong. The visionary has their strengths, but they also have their weakness. And weakness is execution, right? Where on the other side, an operational person, their strength is execution. And they empower the visionary to be a visionary. So I think having the right people in the right seats in order to make sure you have a good strategy, because that's in this article, have a good strategy. Part of that strategy is the people that you have to build the plan and execute against the plan.
And you got to have to believe in the people and empower them, right? You have to empower the team to actually execute. I mean, I've seen that a lot where, people either, one, they don't set out the vision that everybody's aligned to and they know where they're marching. So you got people headed in different directions. Or 2, they're not actually empowering the people to make the decisions to get the actual work done. And that'll just break a team.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's some of the roadblocks that in that book you read about. It's about the visionary still wanting to hold on to the execution, but not being able to do it well because you can't be the visionary and execute at the same time and do it effectively, right? It's like you're juggling too many balls and you can't do them all well. So that's some of the roadblocks and some of the failures that you see is making sure you're focused on the right areas and you have the right people focusing and trusting them to execute.
This is why your leadership team is very important. You brought up a very good point, Jason, right? I need somebody that's a visionary and then somebody that can execute. When you have two visionaries or two executors, you're missing a piece. Right. You need the yin and the yang. Right. Because I've seen organizations struggle where you have the top two leaders, both as visionaries, and nobody's executing under the covers, right? Like that is a huge concern, right? Or you can have people that are just executors and nobody's thinking about, okay, who's going to take us out? Where's our adjacency market? What's our next move? And then your competitor just blows right by you, right? You need both the visionary and the execution side.
You have to, and you have to allow for that freedom of opinion, let's say, because there are so many instances where you have a visionary who sweep in and say, I have these 5 great ideas and we need to institute them. And we need to build these offers around these ideas. And if you don't have that balance to say, hey, number one, is there market demand for this right now? Can we make money off of this right now? Right. I mean, because visionaries think big, they think long, they think far out. And sometimes it's not the right moment for some of those visions. And you have to be comfortable to say, let's table that till next year and take a look to see if there's even a market for this right now.
Yep. Conversations I'll be having this week. I love this next article from Gartner. Now, normally, I don't pull in these trends very often because I don't like these like, hey, here's what's going to happen in 22. And, this is a little longer range, and there's some interesting data in here. And when I started reading through these, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So take like number 3, 60% of organizations will embrace zero trust as a starting point for security by 2025. More than half will fail to realize the benefits. Now, think about that for a second. Yeah, that's scary as hell, right? 60% of organizations will buy into the concept of zero trust, and half of them will fail to realize the benefit.
Right. So you have the 40% who didn't buy in, and half of the 60 are failing.
Right.
Scary.
Exactly right. So, holy cow. I thought the privacy rights will cover 5 billion citizens by 2023. Now think about that again. Conversations I've already started having here around PII and privacy data and what do you share and what don't you share. These are things, CISOs and risk officers have to think about. The privacy side of this is going to be more and more intense when 5 billion citizens are covered by something like a GDP or GDPR. Like that's a big number. That changes the way you think about data and what you're collecting and what you're using. Those have impacts to businesses.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not big on overregulation, but to Ben's point earlier, we definitely need the catalyst to get our C-level executives and board of directors thinking about this because it's not happening organically. So my hope is that it's not overbearing, but it's enough to make, because I don't want it to become a check in the box world, right? We know that fails. We know that for a fact. Check in the box fails. But we need to have balance there where it's going to be motivating enough to make board of directors implement plans and invest.
Yeah. There's just I can go on. By 2025, 60% of organizations will use cybersecurity risk as a primary determinant in conducting third-party transactions and business engagements. If you're in the financial and healthcare space, you should already be at that number because they're regulated. But it's going to take us that long to get everybody else to 60%.
Yeah, I know. Like I mean, again, you're absolutely correct. This should be some of these things should be table stakes already.
Yeah. I do like the last one. By 2026, 50% of C-level executives will have performance requirements related to risk built into their employment contracts. Now, we've been talking about the board, been talking about having cybersecurity expertise on the board. But when you make part of their compensation and their employee contracts tied to risk, that'll also change how people perceive cybersecurity going forward. It's a really interesting stat that if you can get this embedded into the C-level contracts, employee contracts, that also has a big influence on how cybersecurity gets funded and deployed moving forward. But we got to wait until 2026 to even get half of them there.
Well, my hope, I was going to say, Matt,
I've been saying this for a long time. Incentivize the behavior that you actually want. When you think about security and you go out and you talk operations teams, most operations teams, like in an IT environment, have traditionally been incentivized upon uptime and reliability, right? And so if you look at, a security initiative coming in and impacting that reliability or that uptime, it's seen as a detractor to their performance incentive. When you start changing the way the performance incentives are aligned, all of a sudden you see the behavior you actually want to actually have happen suddenly starts to manifest itself. So I think this one's great. I would love to see people align more towards the output that we're looking for.
Yeah. I think the only thing that would make this stat a little bit better if it was 80% and then focused on the CEO, right? Because I think this is generic to C-level executives. I'd love to see a statistic that said 80% of CEOs' compensation plan are going to be around, cybersecurity focused performance. That'd be good for me.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Yeah,
I want
sure.
I want the top leader to be accountable.
Yeah, because at the C level, you could say, well, it's written into the CISO contract.
Yeah, hopefully 100%. It's not the CISO, because then that's just a miss. Like, good luck.
I don't like the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz. And when it comes down to brass tacks, executives have the ability to say, well, you want to know what? The CISO said no, or the CFO said no, or you know what I mean? Like, I just don't want the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz to happen. I want central accountability. That's nirvana.
Ultimately, the alignment should be if it's your top level risk as an enterprise, then the CEO really needs accountability.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I think to your point, Jason, it would be nice if we could get 50% of CEOs to have it in their employee contract by 2026 and not all C levels, because we'd probably be in better shape than just the C levels if the CEO had it in their employee contract.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. Last article, we're still going through some interesting hiring. This is a list of do's and don'ts from a hiring perspective, right? We've talked about this before, but I think it's interesting. Now that I've changed jobs, I'm going through this list going, yep. Like, these are the things I did. Like, these are the things I'm evaluating as I was looking at opportunities. Right? What's the scope of the role? What's the culture and mission like? Like, these are important things that I, as someone who was looking for a job, am looking for. And these are tips and guides for employers to say, these are the things you need to make sure are clear as part of the posting, because you want alignment here, right? Yep. You don't want somebody to come in, you've got a culture that's this and they're over here. Like, you want alignment when you're out searching for these people. And it was funny because I was going through this and I'm going, these are all the questions I'm asking when I'm out looking. Like, I want to make sure I have 100% alignment with these.
I love that you brought this article in, because when I read it, we have a sister company called KLR. They have executive search as part of one of their offers, and we were helping a mutual customer, a large bank in Connecticut, and they're looking for a CISO. So they brought me in to help augment their executive search team to really build out that job description while they're looking for their executive search, while they're going through their executive search process and looking for the CISO. So many of these items we talked about, right? And working with the chief risk officer. Listen, this isn't your Nirvana wish list. Seriously was a conversation that we had. Let's make it so you're getting good applicants. Let's make sure we're getting good people at the table, right? Don't list every certification in the book as a requirement. I mean, that was another one. Nice to have, sure. Shouldn't be a requirement. These lists and lists and lists of certifications. Right. So this totally aligns with the conversations that we're having today, about hiring at the executive level.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, any final closing thoughts? Is your audio up? He's been having some issues.
No, I was thinking, look, you hit it. I think you've really got to be tailored to what you're actually looking for a role. And Jason, you mentioned it. Like, it can't be everything, right? It's got to be the things that are really important to you. You have to target it. So, and don't be afraid to bring somebody in who has the potential for the talent, but not necessarily the opportunity.
Dead on, Ben.
To show
Dead on.
talent past.
I love that you just said that, Ben, because one of the things I said to the chief risk officer was, do you have the appetite for this person to grow into this position? Right? And that was a main focus right there, because they had nirvana in this job description before it was released. And one of the main things was, do you have the appetite to let this person grow into that?
And I would also say, like, if you have nirvana in your job title, you better have nirvana in the pay scale.
Compensation,
right? Like, how often do you see that? It's not aligned, right? Like, what you're asking for is not what you're paying.
You know it.
Yes, interesting times on the compensation discussion, but for another time. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week. I'll be home on Business Security Week.